Hi, I'm Arcalena. Tonight I will be doing a Hades modded all weapons race with my lovely wife Trash Lapras.
Hi, I'm Trash Lapras, and yeah, I'm going to be racing my wife in Hades today, and hopefully also playing Hades with her if we meet that 2P1C incentive. And we're also here with a couple of lovely commentators. We have nnevic and ChelseaInSpace with us.
Hello, I'm nnevic, and I talk about this game a lot and even play it sometimes.
Hi, I'm ChelseaInSpace, or just Chelsea. I mostly run the Fist's weapon in this game, and I'm also here to talk about it.
Yeah, so I think we have one pet to do before we get started, and while that's happening, I think Chelsea can explain a little bit about Hades while we're getting things set up.
Yeah, sure. Hades, roguelike by Supergiant Games from the year 2020. It's like an isometric action brawler kind of gameplay. There are 6 weapons total that you can be utilized. We play as Zagreus, son of Hades. We are fighting our way through the Greek underworld against our father Hades to find our mother. And as mentioned, we are running a all weapons race today, so we'll be seeing each of the 6 weapons in action. And any further explanations we will probably save for once the run has started.
Alrighty, so if both runners are ready, cool. Let's get this going in 3, 2, 1, go.
Darkness, give me strength.
Alrighty, so like Chelsea mentioned, we're trying to escape the underworld, and along the way we can get a lot of help from various gods and other things to do it. So both runners have started off with actually a hammer. Hammers in Hades basically modify the way the weapon works a lot more than like a boon would. So both runners have started with Flurry Jab. This basically means that their attacks are going to be a lot faster, and when they attack right after dashing, you basically get 2 attacks for free instead of just the one you would normally get. Both runners have also started with the Poseidon keepsake. That's because they want to start with his dash. So the basic playstyle for the first weapon running, the spear, is that you're going to be dashing around a lot, mashing attack, mashing dash, and so with all of those dashes, what we really want is to have those dashes actually dealing damage.
So with both runners having acquired their first boon, the dash, the build path from here is somewhat flexible for this weapon. We see Lapras picking up a boon of the goddess Artemis. There are 10 total gods in this game, the Olympian gods that want to help Zagreus escape the underworld because they also can't stand Hades. And we will be collecting a variety of boons, so from usually 4 or 5 of them, depending on the build and how the run exactly goes.
Yeah, so we also see, looks like Elena picks up an attack boon as well. So Hades, each weapon has a couple of different special moves that you can do. So there's the attack, like we mentioned, that's kind of the big thing that we're modifying with Flurry Jab. There's also a special. We're running on the aspect of Achilles. We'll probably talk about aspects a little more later in the run, but for now, just know that, like we just saw, whenever the runners do a special, which is them throwing the spear in front of them, they can then press the special button again to just kind of go right to wherever that special was. So it's a really fast weapon in terms of how quickly you can traverse, and that actually makes it one of the better ones for speedrunning. The other thing that you get is the first 4 attacks or casts. We haven't seen many of those yet, but we'll be building into them later. But yeah, the first 4 of those after you special get a pretty significant damage boost. So that between those 2, Achilles actually becomes one of the better weapons just in speedrunning the game in general.
And speaking of going fast, both our runners have already entered the final combat room of the first region in this game, of which there are 4 in total. There's a set number of rooms for every region, but the contents of those rooms are somewhat randomized, as well as the selection of enemies we will encounter. We'll probably also get to talk about that a lot more later, but right now we are preparing for encountering our first end boss. Waiting at the end of each of those 4 biomes is a special boss fight. In this case, we are encountering the Fury sisters, or at least one of them, potentially aided by some of her sisters. And in this case, we actually got the worst option for both the runners, because Tisiphone is the slowest of the three.
Even though Tis is the slowest, though, both of them are making really quick work just from these optimized builds that you're going to be seeing for hopefully this entire run. The other thing that we're looking at is Elena has also picked up a cast boon on a build component. That's also what Lapras is going to be looking for. But the cast boons that they're going for is going to be a little bit different. So Lapras has taken the Ares keepsake. She's going to be looking for his cast. Essentially what that's going to look like is it's going to be sending these kind of spinning vortexes of, I think they're supposed to be blades out in front of her. And that's going to be really good because it does a lot of damage. Both runners are just picking up a boon from Hermes, the god of speed. We're speedrunners, so, Hermes can do a lot of good things for us. Unfortunately, Elena didn't get a whole lot. Trash Lapras did get a +1 dash, so that's going to let her get more of those dashes in, which, as we discussed, does a lot of damage, and also it just lets her move through rooms even faster.
For Alina, I think it was already the second Hermes she picked up this run, and she got an upgrade which makes it so she's especially fast and immune to stuns right after dashing. There's a few synergies within those boons that we can pick up, but unfortunately in this run we won't be seeing any of them because Alina is just running with the Hyper Sprint, which increases her speed after dashing, and Lapras is going with the additional dash for more damage output with this build specifically, because the upgraded dash that does splash damage wherever we are dashing to is a huge part of the damage output of this specific build.
And you also just saw both runners make really quick work of that Witch's mini-boss. If you've played the game casually, you probably don't remember it looking quite that easy, and that's one of kind of the biggest optimizations that we have on the speedrunning side. So we use the summon from Meg basically to do a bunch of damage in a line, and that strips the armor off of that all of the witches in that room, along with a little bit of a setup to make them all, group up nicely. And that makes that combat take, something like 4 seconds, maybe 5, compared to, without the summon, it would be, a lot worse. Something on the order of like 15, 20, maybe 25.
Both our runners are now on near equal pace, entering the end of the biome again, so we're preparing for another boss fight against the Lernian Bone Hydra, as Zacchaeus affectionately calls her Lernie.
Yeah, so the unique thing about Lernie in all of these bosses is that Lernie is going to spawn a whole bunch of different side heads, and that's actually one of the reasons why we're running with Heat. So Heat in Hades is a difficulty modifier, so the easiest run is going to be a 0 Heat run, but you'll notice that both runners have 15 Heat selected. We won't get into all of the details of that Heat now, but the most relevant thing here is that some of that Heat is being used to modify this fight. Both runners finishing incredibly quickly. So you might notice that there's a whole bunch of lava around. If you played the game, you might not have seen that. Essentially what happens is it makes the arena smaller, puts all those pools of lava around, but in doing so, it also means that those side heads are right next to each other, so it means you don't need to run around as much trying to kill them.
And with that, we're zooming on to the third biome out of 4. This is Elysium, typically the longest biome, but also the one that can the most dramatically vary in actual length. There's a lot of rooms here, and I alluded to it earlier, but there are different sorts of rooms that we can encounter. The typical normal combat room, as we're seeing it on both screens right now, is what we encounter usually, but it's also pretty much the worst option. There will be rooms where no fighting is necessary, and then since there's always the same set number of rooms per biome, obviously it's very much preferable to go through a room where no fighting is required. Lena just actually got 2 of them in a row. First, a gate through which she visited the god Chaos in their realm, and then a little story encounter where there's just a few people to talk to and no combat happening at all. These are extremely beneficial for speedrunners because they just are so much quicker than actually having to fight through several waves, typically 2 or 3 of them of enemies.
Yeah,
And
Elena
there's
actually
right
just
the
got...
next free room with the fountain where we just get to heal up.
Although it looks like Lapras does have a Chaos Gate in this room, so maybe things will even out a bit. The other thing is Lapras did just pick up Hunting Blades a couple of chambers ago, so now her casts that spinning red circle seek towards the closest enemies. So instead of having it so when you throw it out, the enemies then just kind of wander out of your casts, the casts will follow the enemies around. This is also really good for boss fights, as you know, the bosses in Hades, particularly the later ones that we're going to see very soon, are pretty dynamic, and so just having that extra homing means that you can do a lot more damage. Lots of duo boons actually. So we've seen the runners pick up a couple of boons. Hunting Blades was one, but they have this kind of green outline. Those come from 2 different gods. So Elena just picked up Lightning Rod, which is a boon that comes from Zeus and Artemis. And now you'll see that there are a bunch of random lightning bolts just kind of coming down. That's just from the stones on the ground. Those usually are used to fuel the casts, but when you have Rod, if they're on the ground, they also cause these lightning bolts. And you'll note that that's doing a good amount of damage while also allowing Elena to move around and kill other enemies.
Looks like Elena is actually pulling slightly ahead here, already heading into the last boss fight of this area, while Lapras still has 1.5 rooms to go. And we'll see Elena make very quick work of these bosses. We have a lot of AoE damage. They like to group up together, even though there's 2 of them. It's a very quick fight because it's quite easy to just hit both of them at the same time. And we have a lot of tools in our build at this point in the run, and a lot of damage, ideally.
Yeah, Elena actually having a little bit of issues there just because Theseus decided to run away. He can do that sometimes, but...
the coward he is.
True. But still makes pretty quick work of that, and Lapras is not far behind. Really blessed with green boons today. We saw like 2 of them in practice, so this is a little bit wild. Elena's now moving on into the last biome of the game before the final boss, the Temple of Styx. It's a little bit of a different biome, if Chelsea wants to talk about that.
Oh yeah, so instead of having a set number of rooms that appear consecutively, Styx consists of 5 tunnels, of which we choose which one to enter at which point. The goal is to find a little sack that contains some vaguely specified matter. The point is, it's a treat for Cerberus, the dog who guards the exit of the underworld. So we want to get past him, but we don't want to fight him, so we just find him a little snack. And we have a chance of finding that snack sack at the end of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th tunnel in Styx, usually. But since we are playing the modded category, to make sure the variance of the runs isn't too high, we will always see that sack and get to progress out of this biome after the 2nd tunnel. So for the 1st tunnel, we will always pick one that guarantees a mini boss encounter at the end, because it's just faster than having a regular room appear there. And then we are onto the 2nd tunnel. We were then guaranteed to be done with the biome in the modded category.
Yeah. And actually, the sack mechanic is one of the biggest motivators behind the mod pack. A lot of people, when they hear that we're running like a modded race, and they're a little bit curious as to why that exists, but especially for these long categories where, if you have good sack luck at the start and then, you really lose a couple of 50-50s badly in like the 6th weapon, that's, you're about an hour and a half in, and all of a sudden it just goes away. So the mod pack is really good for making the longevity of the community. That being said, Elena is now moving into the final boss of the game, Hades. Spoiler. We'll see him. This is the 1st run. Obviously, we need to beat him with every weapon, so we're going to see him 5 more times over the course of this run. And Lapras is not far behind.
So the boss fight against Hades has 2 phases, like he has 2 health bars. He does a couple things that can be very annoying, like we just saw. He just went invisible for a little bit there. He likes to do that if he particularly hates the runner, or just all the time, really. During the first phase, his health bar is split up into 3 parts, where he will go invulnerable and summon further enemies in between each of those 3 bits. And then for the last phase, he will do that once in the middle of the health bar, where he goes invulnerable. But we're making pretty quick work of him here. He's already through his first phase on Alena's run.
Yeah, Elena got a little bit unlucky with the additional enemies summoned in. Some of the enemies were void stones, which essentially are these crystal things that make nearby enemies invulnerable. So usually in a speed run, you can just kind of ignore the extra enemies he spawns in, because we're just going to kill him really quickly. But you know, when it's those and they make him invulnerable, you really do need to go out of your way to kill them, which is a little bit unfortunate. Lapras is actually on the other side of the screen doing a really good job of catching up. I think her build was a little bit better. We can really see how much damage those hunting blades are putting out. So we have both runners getting their Hades kill only a couple of seconds apart.
There.
And
May
with
I,
Hades...
oh, sorry.
In the name of
No, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Oh, I was just going to hop in real quick to say we have one more pet of the dog. So,
Very exciting.
Whenever is best for the runners. We do have a second pet for the dog. I also wanted to say we are just about a quarter of the way already to the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. So get those donations in. I know we love petting the dog. However, 2 players, 1 controller, come on. We don't want to miss that. Get those donations in.
Yeah, it's a really good run if you haven't seen it, and even if you have, they're running a different aspect from what they did at GDQ. Speaking of other aspects, we're now running into the second weapon, which is going to be the gun. Famously, ancient Greeks had guns, that shoot bullets and also shoot out grenades. If you don't know that, maybe, I don't know, I'm pretty sure it's in the Iliad or something. But yeah.
Funnily enough, despite the gun being a gun that shoots bullets, we are actually going with a very similar build choice here and picking up the Poseidon Dash as our first boon again. It's just very, very solid damage on nearly every aspect. So it's very preferred for speedruns, especially longer marathon categories like this one, where you can't just reset when you don't get the build you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. The other build component that both runners are trying to get as soon as possible is, again, a hammer. So I believe Elena already has it, and it looks like Lap does as maybe not. I can't quite tell. Is this chamber? Okay. So the hammer spread fire, what that does is it completely changes the attack. So instead of having a fairly medium range projectile, instead what it's going to do is it's going to give us a short range thing that does something like 4 times as much damage, I want to say, and also, it uses up a little bit more. We have less ammunition, but the aspect of the rail we've chosen, Zagrail, has more ammo at base, so it doesn't actually end up mattering too much. The other thing is, obviously, because we're trying to do so much damage with our dash, we really don't care about the shorter attack range. It doesn't end up mattering too much, because we want to be right next to enemies anyway.
Famously, the Greek also had shotguns, right?
Yeah, that's in one of the legends, right? Something. Lapras being presented with the first attack boon of the run, picking up Demeter attack. Not the best attack possible, but is pretty good just because it's a high percentage. Really will help clear through, especially Tartarus, that much faster. On the other side, Elena has seen an Artemis boon, who would normally be wanting to get the attack from, but just another example of the RNG in Hades. You don't always get the boon you want, even if you can get the god you want.
But at least as support, she also got a call already by Zeus. Calls are basically a mechanic where you directly call the gods power to your side to let them help you a little bit. In Zeus' case, that means that like big thunderbolts are coming down from the skies for a little bit. There's a bar in the bottom left under our health bar that fills up, and whenever one of the 4 segments of that is filled, we get to use the call to call the god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And looks like both runners are going to very quickly be done with Chamber 12, so we'll get to see another one of the Furies after a little bit of shopping first. Yeah, maybe just, hopefully we get a different one, you know. We want a little variety here. And yeah, so Elena's walking into the fight with Electo. She is one of the faster two. Lap is unfortunately stuck with Tis again. But yeah, so it doesn't actually matter too much. Tisiphone only loses a couple of seconds, so in the grand scheme of things, not too bad. But Electo is, she shoots out these, like, you know, spinning blade things, except if you kill her fast enough, it kind of doesn't matter. So again, with the speedrunning builds, we kind of just blaze through the bosses, and it doesn't actually matter how scary their attacks are.
You might also notice that the runners are not super cautious to avoid taking damage. Even though this is a roguelike, we got a couple of respawns per run, 3 in fact. So just taking damage to make sure you deal damage yourself faster is always the better trade in these speedruns. There are a few categories where this doesn't quite apply, but for what we're seeing here today, tanking just 20, 40 damage, whatever, to just keep hammering away at a boss is no problem.
Yep. The other thing that we're going to see here is, in Asphodel especially, is kind of the shortcoming of Zagrael. You'll notice everything jumps around a lot, so the runners are going to have to work pretty hard to not, between knocking enemies away with their dash, and also enemies just naturally trying to jump. They're going to be doing a lot of work just trying to stay close to things. But while that's happening, we probably have time for a donation or two.
Can do. Anonymous sent in $50 and said, "It's killing me to not donate for petting the dog, but we need this bonus run." Because we are more than a quarter of the way to the bonus run at $965 out of the $3,500 we need. So get those donations in, because I agree with Anonymous, we need this bonus run. We also had $250 come in from Ghosty Boy 97, who I think I also saw in chat, that says, "Ahoy there, little Hades. Always awesome to see a Laplana race going on. May you both get the perfect builds, all the free rooms, and much love from the Hades speedrunning community." Thanks so much for that generous donation.
Never heard of that guy.
We love Ghost. Yeah,
We do
so
love him, yes.
yeah, both runners are actually getting, again, the Witches mid-boss in Chamber 21, so we're pretty close still. And yeah, really what they're looking for from a build perspective in this Asphodel is just going to be those supplemental secondary boons. So Elena just picked one up from Poseidon, the boon Razor Shoals. So now whenever an enemy moves after being hit with our dash, what's going to happen is they'll just kind of take actually a fairly high rate of damage over time. This does include enemies that are moved by the pushback of the dash too. So this actually does a whole lot of damage, because you dash into an enemy, they get knocked back, and then they start walking back towards you, and all of a sudden you have this very high damage over time effect just dealing with them. The unfortunate thing is that doesn't do a whole lot for bosses.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, once again, we see both of the runners entering the next boss fight in extremely quick succession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a really close race so far. The other thing to look out for... The other thing to look out for in this learning fight, you're going to see a lot of call usage from Elena. You might have, especially, with some of the other calls, it's you generally want to try and get a full call up. But when you're just, especially in most of these boss fights, it never actually lasts long enough for you to be not charging up a full call. So that's just one of the things that she's basically going to be balancing the rest of the run, is you just need to keep track of what your call's at and know, when do I use it to actually get the biggest benefit. The other thing on Elena's side of the screen that I think is worth noting is instead of an attack boon, she's ended up going with the Shattered Shackle Keepsake. So what that does is it just means if you don't have a boon on your attack, special, or cast, it's going to end up dealing, it gets 100% damage bonus. So pretty similar to what Lapras's attack is going to be doing.
Yeah, you're sacrificing the bonus effect, of course, and you're not really like building any further synergies with supporting wounds of those bonus effects, but it's also extremely self-sufficient and reliable bonus damage.
And also the other thing that I guess we haven't talked about, but it really is benefited by is this is a real-time run. So, when you're in a menu, that pauses the in-game timer. But unfortunately, Supergiant Games wasn't quite able to figure out how to pause real-life time while you're trying to make a decision. So, by taking the shackle, it also allows you to stop trying to look for an attack boon. You don't need to worry about, managing your keepsakes anymore. It just lets you do a lot less menus, and menus do end up adding up over the course of a run.
Maybe they'll figure that out for Hades too.
No, maybe. On the other side of the screen, Lapras did just pick up another boon from Hermes, plus 2 dashes. So instead of getting the 2 dashes that you start the run with, she instead now has an additional 2, so a total of 4. And that's going to actually help her a lot, especially when you knock an enemy away. It's really helpful to have another dash to just get right next to them again.
We also see another hammer picked up. I'm not actually sure how long ago, but you can see instead of throwing out 1 grenade with our special move, we're now throwing out 5 at a time. Or at least Alina is.
Yeah. And, we probably do have time for another couple donations while we're there finishing up Elysium.
Absolutely. And big news, we just passed $1,000 for the 2 players, 1 controller run. So we are making amazing progress so fast. Thank you so much for your donations, including one from Pitman Lionhouse for $50. And they say, while we would love to pet that goodest 3-headed doggo, we need to add that 2-player, 1 controller run to the schedule. We'll make sure to give our fur baby some extra pets to make up for it. Good luck, Arcalena and Trash Lapras, and go fast. Thank you so much for that donation. We also had a donation come in from Beth for $20 that says, nothing beats watching 2 wives speedrun with my soon-to-be wife. Good luck from a fellow Sapphic Envy. Less than 3. Thank you so much, Beth.
Awesome, yeah. I mean, the other thing is, I'll let you in on a little secret. They can still pet the dog after that 2-player, 1 controller one. So if we get that met, that is another option for more dog petting, too. Lapras is now headed into the Heroes fight. Elena will be there shortly afterwards. Really, this should be pretty fast. Lapras has picked up a hammer that allows enemies targeted by the special to take more incoming damage. So that means that her dash does more damage, her attacks do more damage, and that actually synergizes pretty well with all of the ways to do damage that she has. So we see her just melting through the Heroes of Elysium, and Elena is not far behind. So going into Styx, we'll probably see Lapras trying to just pick up, the Hades keepsake. I know when I was playing casually, I had no idea why anyone would ever want to use this keepsake. It basically, if you don't know, it makes you invisible for a bit, but that seemed a lot less useful than, having invulnerability to damage, getting an extra death defiance. But it turns out that, not written in the game text or anything, I believe, it also does a lot of extra damage. So whenever that call is active, you will be having 100% damage increase, which is a pretty big number.
And we do love our big numbers here.
We do love big numbers. Actually, that's one of the reasons why one of the aspects that we'll see later gets selected, just because it hits very big numbers. Really, we're simple in this community. We like big numbers and small times.
Well, it also does hit those big numbers very, very, very fast, which is also something we especially like in this community. So
that's true.
It's a perfect fit, honestly.
Yeah.
Strike count.
We see a couple of extra Styx mid bosses here. So that was the big satyr. You might have seen him very briefly. Essentially, the entire thing behind him is he's supposed to poison you, but again, we can just kind of tank that damage when we're speedrunning because the actual tick rate of the poison is pretty low, so if you kill him in like 3 seconds, then you end up taking like maybe 5 damage. So again, it's just there's so many things in this game that if you have a good enough build, it kind of doesn't matter how much damage they're dealing. And yeah, both runners should soon be moving into the second Hades fight of the run.
Just a quick last shopping stop before the fight for Lapras, and with that they're indeed entering at very, very similar times once again.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive how close they've been also in practice. Usually in Hades you'll get, a little bit more of a discrepancy, so it's really exciting to see that we've been so close for this raid.
So one thing we see at the start of the Hades fight, which we have not talked about yet, is that we summon one of our companions with a big AoE. It's also one of the things that lets us kill the mini-bosses extremely quickly. And that's just a strategy thing that also sets apart like the speedrunning from the casual gameplay, because we obviously know like mathematically where exactly we have to use that kind of damage to save the maximum amount of time, and yeah, typically it's the mid bosses or end bosses of the biome wherever applicable, and Hades also gets like a big nice summon right in the face at the very start of this fight usually.
Yep, and the reason especially that we're using it on Hades at the start is like we talked about on that first Hades fight. He does that invisible move, and we can't do any damage while he's done. That takes 2 to 3 seconds, so if we use that summon right at the start, you can potentially, if he decides to go invisible right at the start of the fight, you can usually get enough damage in so that he doesn't actually get that off. But because he selected the attack, it still gets used and there's a cooldown on it. And wow, again, both runners are finishing very close together. Lapras was a couple seconds faster on that run. Elena was, a couple seconds faster on the other one. So very, very close.
Do you believe Lapras does owe us one extra pet, though?
I do.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get it.
Oh, and Cerberus is here. Sometimes Cerberus gets a little bit busy, so Lapras is just catching up on some owed pets for the goodest boy.
Can't fault dog for just being off doing dog things sometimes.
That's true.
And with 3 heads, he probably has like 3 times the amount of like dog things on his mind.
That's, yeah, three times the number of things to chase, too. Moving into the third weapon of the run, we're almost halfway through, is Nemesis, the sword. So we actually see this is kind of the first place where the runners are going to differ a bit on build. So Elena is going with the tried and true Splash Dash, while Lapras is going for a little bit more of a, I want to say, chaotic strategy. So she's starting with the Shattered Shackle that we talked about a little bit ago. So Shackle on Nem Sword specifically is actually a pretty common build thing because it gives you enough damage to work through the early game, and then you just are, playing with what the game gives you.
It's one of the nice things about Hades speedrunning in general. With the keepsakes, we can choose between each biome that then force a specific god to appear next. We have a lot of control over what building we are exactly trying to work on, even with a RNG heavy game such as Hades. But sometimes the fun and the appeal is also to just let the game kind of come at you and see what's gonna come out of it, and Shackle start is kind of the most viable way to do that in a speedrun setting, and I like it a lot for that reason, because it very much embodies more of a spirit of just a casual run. We'll see what we end up with.
Yeah, I mean, and you still get a lot of benefit from it, so especially once we get the sword hammer, basically all the swords want double edge, which means your dash strike attacks twice. And which, because the main way you do damage in Hades with the sword is just two dash strikes and then a special and then 2 dash strikes, that's just your base damage cycle. That works really well with a hammer that just means each dash strike is now 2, right? It doubles your damage. The other thing to keep an eye out on is the whole gimmick of Nemesis is it gives you crit chance after your special. So both runners are using, special into a lot of rooms, and that's just to get that crit chance up as soon as possible. But, even without that crit chance, you still want to be doing specials on swords. So Nemesis is just, it synergizes really well with what your damage combos want to be.
Yeah, Nemesis is one of those aspects where the basic gameplay rhythm doesn't really change at all compared to the base aspect that you start the game with. There's some aspect which very drastically change how the moves of the weapon need to function and how to best abuse them. But with Nemesis, it's kind of like the Zagreus sword, which is always the base aspect version of each of the weapons. It just gives it a whole bunch more.
And the other really nice thing about Nemesis is just, especially early game, those crits really are enough to just get you through Tart combined with that hammer. So it gives you a lot of time just to wait for your build to come online. Unlike some of the aspects we'll see later, it just takes a while to get damage on those. Nemesis, you're moving through Tartarus really quickly, and that lets you already be trying to plan ahead, figure out where the damage for the rest of the game is.
Yeah, and part of the reason why crit is so powerful in this game, because unlike other games where crit might be a 2 times or maybe even just a 1.5 times modifier or whatever, crits in Hades are actually a 3 times modifier. So it's a very powerful and viable strategy to try and abuse crits, especially on this aspect.
Yeah, big numbers again. It always comes back to the big numbers.
Can I hop in for a second to talk about some big numbers?
Oh, yes, of course.
I would love to let you know that we have passed $71,000 raised for the National Women's Law Center. And we also are almost a third of the way to the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. So I know we can do it. Chat, get those donations in. Thank you so much for all that we've raised so far. And we've got a little bit more to go, but I know we can get that bonus run. All right, back to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for hopping in. So we see Lapras is actually going for a pretty interesting build here. The cards kind of fell in her favor. So now she's going to be going for the boon called Merciful End. Merciful End is kind of a staple in the speedrunning community. We don't see it quite as much at these live events just because it's hard to get everything, but when the game gives you almost everything you need, might as well try for it. She's going to be looking for, it's specifically a duo boon from Ares or Athena, so we see that she's forced Ares, and what happens is, you'll notice that when she attacks an enemy, it gets this little red dagger above its head that falls after a bit and does, some amount of damage. I don't know numbers. And she gets it. Wonderful. So now, whenever she does a special, after getting that, what's going to happen is it will instantly trigger that little sword thing to fall and deal damage. So it's one of the fastest ways to deal damage on basically any melee weapon.
Hi, can I interrupt very quickly again with some more numbers?
Of course.
It's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, because we just got $1,000 donation from the Yeti.
Wow.
That went towards that 2 players, 1 controller bonus run, so we are now 60% of the way there. And the Yeti says, "Hey all, Yeti here. We're excited to share this first donation of $1,000 raised from the official Frost Fatales 2024 collection items. Thank you to everyone who has supported the collection so far. Proceeds from every item is donated directly to National Women's Law Center. As big fans of 2P1C, please put this donation towards the 2P1C bonus run. Let's go!" Thank you so much, the Yeti. Y'all are amazing over there. Thank you so much for the donation. And yeah, now we are 60% of the way to the bonus run, over halfway there. So get those donations in. We can make it.
Yeah, totally. That's a huge number. Thank you for jumping in.
Not like I'm biased or anything, but that was kind of really the perfect time to put that donation in towards an incentive.
Oh yeah. Now we have both runners reaching the end of Asphodel, and Lapras finally gets that double-edged hammer we mentioned in, Chamber 4. So the game was a little bit rude to her, given that how much of the damage output that is, but she still was able to make her way through all of Tartarus and Asphodel, even with that without that kind of crucial piece of the build. We can also see with Lernie just how much damage Merciful End is going to be doing, so she's just making really quick work of that, just even with the attack special rhythm. On Elena's side, she has picked up Zeus Call again, another speedrunning favorite, for, similar reasons. We're just trying to find different ways that we can get extra damage out. Zeus Call is a perfect way, especially because it means that you don't really need to stop doing what you would normally be doing. You can still get those lightning bolts raining down without having to change your basic rhythm or anything. You just push the call, and as you keep attacking, it will, move things along and just deal more damage.
So interesting thing here, Lapras actually just sold the dash that she started with.
That's it for us.
This is to make room for the Athena dash, hopefully, because to actually activate the Merciful and do a boon, deflect attack has to hit, and deflects is what the goddess Athena upgrades our attacks with. So in this case, she's looking to have that deflect effect, that's hard to say, on her dash instead of just her special, so she can just hit an enemy and immediately hit them with the dash to like trigger the big damage numbers that we are looking for with this build. And it's somewhat risky because like you can't necessarily guarantee that you're gonna like see it quickly, and you're definitely losing a bit of damage for a couple chambers by like giving up the Poseidon dash, but well, let's hope it pays off, right?
I will say the other thing is, I know Lapras in particular, but also just a lot of runners on Nemesis specifically are not super fond of Splash Dash in Elysium. It can make dealing with, especially the Great Shields, which are enemies that have shields, pretty hard. And it, in general, just doesn't, it kind of stops doing as much damage as you want it to. So it doesn't hurt quite as much as it would, losing it in Tart. So she, in a way, she kind of does get the best of both worlds if she can get that Athena dash quickly.
Yeah, the repositioning aspect of Poseidon is like
Point for Charon.
a huge boon at certain points in the game, and just somewhat of a liability in others. Very much also depending on the exact weapon, of course. And Sword, unfortunately, requires a certain amount of precision. With its attack, that's not as present in most other aspects in this game. It's kind of funny how you run around with a gun and later a bow, spoilers, and kind of exact precision of your attacks might not even be as important as when you're like trying to poke people with your sword.
Yeah. The other thing just I want to highlight is just how well these runners are doing. It is especially on the sword. It is a lot harder to actually hit things with your dash strike than they're making it look. And just how smooth it all looks and how they're adapting to all of the various things that the game's throwing at them is really impressive. And especially without having Splash Dash to lean on to deal damage even if you miss that dash strike, Lapras is making it look really clean and precise.
Yeah, it's really a very very narrow stick that you're trying to poke the enemies with here.
Yeah, the hitboxes are deceptively small. But Elena is now, I believe she got a story room a little bit ago, and that put her into the lead. So she's now moving into Heroes. Lapras gets what should be a really fast combat, so she'll be not far behind. With Heroes on Sword specifically, you're looking to do basically the same things that we've seen on the other other weapons, sorry. But it is kind of even more important that you get that grouping because your hitboxes are so small. We're also probably going to see Elena using her call to try and take a little bit less damage because you go invulnerable for a little bit after using the call.
Yeah, the heroes can be a little fickle with how they want to move sometimes. Like there's obviously we try to like get them in the same position, but sometimes they're not quite cooperative or like to just get stuck in animations for quite a long time when they're about to enter their invincibility bubble. And Lapras just made incredibly quick work of them, as I said that. So
oh yeah, that's the power of Merciful End. Also, right before she went into that fight, she picked up a boon from Ares. Again, the secondary boons from a god are often the ones that are really powerful. Just because that you getting that thing that is going to buff your dash or your attack or whatever. That can often be what's game breaking. So she picked up Impending Doom, and now all of her Doom does 60% more damage essentially. Just that.
Yeah, usually the drawback is that it takes longer to activate, but since we are like immediately activating it with the power of our duo boon, that drawback just kind of doesn't matter at all, and it's just more damage. Straight upside.
And while they're finishing up the sticks, probably have time for another 2 or 3 donations.
Absolutely, and I did forget to mention that with that last donation, we did pass $72,000 in total for the marathon. We are also almost 75% of the way there to the bonus run, so we're making great progress. Thank you so much, everyone, for your donations, including $300 from Karen. I'm so sorry for this. That just says... so thank you so much. You've been treated to some strange ASMR tonight. We also had $25 come in from Terberry and Tyrannosaurus X that says, "We are always amazed on the skill and precision that Laplena showcased. We love you both and Fundy. We need to see the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run." So thank you so much for that donation.
Awesome,
Fundy is
thank
our
you.
cat. She gets lots of pets too.
Vigilant.
She does.
Yeah, given that we're just about to hit like the halfway point of this run, I feel like we're on a pretty good pace to hit that.
But there are also
incentive.
more pets for the goodest boy though, so
Right.
don't forget.
Buy even more time with that, of course.
Of course, yeah. So we have both runners going into the 3rd Hades fight of the night. I would expect Lapras to have a little bit of an edge here, just with the power of Merciful End. Elena's build is kind of showcasing the weaker points of Splash Dash, which is it's really good in the early game, but it takes a bit of scaling. So yeah, we're just seeing Lapras making a little bit faster work of that first stage, just on the power of build. Elena, also, she keeps getting Void Stones. This is happening in practice too. I don't know what's happening with that, but lots of those crystals that make things invulnerable. Not really what we want to see.
They're just trying to keep it close, you know?
Keeping it close, yeah. But yeah, something else I want to highlight now that Elena's doing it is in the Hades fight, one of the best ways to keep things a little bit more consistent is you want to try and lure him into a wall. So if he's attacking into a wall, then he only kind of has half of the directions to go in. If he's not attacking into a wall, he can kind of dash anywhere. So, and with almost simultaneous boss kills too, that was really cool to see. So yeah, we do want to have, in general as runners, we're trying to keep it not just doing damage, but we're trying to make it so that the boss patterns are going to be a little bit more predictable, and that makes our lives a lot easier.
Showed you that time, Father.
All right, and with that, we are starting into what should be the second half of the run.
I believe we're going to Hera next.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm ready.
Already. Yeah, so Hera is kind of the first of the weird aspects of this run, in a sense. So there are 2 weapons in Hades that completely modify the way that your cast works. They're Hera, which we're seeing now, and Beowulf, which I'd imagine we'd be seeing next. So you'll notice that we're starting with Aphrodite, and on Lapras' side, she actually has that boon, so you'll see her loading the Aphrodite cast, and then she shoots an arrow, and it kind of explodes at the end of that arrow. There are a couple of advantages specifically to doing Aphrodite cast, so basically that's a very short range cast, so usually it's pretty hard to utilize. But because we're shooting it out of the end of an arrow, that short range actually becomes an advantage. On Elena's screen, you'll notice that when the arrow kills the enemy, the cast just kind of keeps going. With Aphrodite cast, what happens is it just kind of, it falls in place, so that makes keeping track of them a little easier. The other thing that's going to happen with that is Aphrodite cast is the highest damage cast in the game, or I guess the second highest maybe, behind Dionysus, but he's not great. So we're going to be using Aphrodite here, and what that's going to do is that just means we have initially, we already have a very solid burst damage option, and it also makes it easier to use.
And these are the truly highest highs of the damage numbers in this game. This aspect specifically is one of the overall single run world record contenders typically. not the most popular, but definitely one with like the highest top end performance possibly in the entire game with a cast build.
Yeah, and one of the reasons behind that, it being having such a high end, is there are just more ways that you can get those high numbers. So we see Elena entering a Chaos Gate. We're really looking for two specific things here. We want either an extra stone, or we want cast damage. Those two things, and Elena gets the stone, that's perfect. Those two things are going to allow us to just deal even more damage, because we're kind of limited in the damage output by the number of stones we have. If we have 4 of them, that's great. That means that boss fights are just going to be faster. Same thing if you can get a % damage on that. You know, if your cast deals 70% more damage and basically all of your damage comes from your cast, that's a winning formula, right? Lapras also, after this chamber, will have a chance to get one of those cast buffs as well.
Yeah, and this is also due to how differently the weapon functions. Also gives us opportunity to talk a bit more about stuff we kind of glossed over so far, like the chaos mechanic, where you pick a reward, and you're also presented with the drawback. So for several encounters, you will have an even harder time. But if you survive that, then at the end of that, you get a reward and more damage on your cast, or 1 more cast stone up from the 3 that you start with, are absolutely core to making this build go as fast as it possibly could be. Another mechanic that we've been seeing a lot more of now in this run is the runners will be checking the wells. They're kind of like mini shops that we find sometimes in the room, in the biomes, but also always between the biomes. They're usually rather negligible because most of the items there are not really worth the money, and they're also only temporary. But as we just saw it here, Alina was able to pick up an extra stone from that well as well. Again, it's only temporary, but in this case, temporary means you get to keep it for 6 entire rooms, which is basically all of Asphodel, and ramping up your damage output by like somewhere between like 20 and 30% for that time only is like an incredible deal, because it's really just a few coins that you're spending on it.
Yep. The other thing that we're looking for in Asphodel now is both runners are going to be looking for a boon called Snowburst. So you've been seeing how Hera has a really good single target damage, but the issue is, if we get a bunch of small enemies that we can't kill with 1 arrow maybe, but still don't have a whole lot of health. The issue is going to be that we don't have a good way to kill them efficiently. So what Snowburst is when you load a cast, it'll create this little explosion around you. And that's actually a good thing to be looking for. And that's kind of the big thing that we really want, other than, just more cast damage on Hera. It also looks like Lapras just got rush delivery. Chelsea, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up, actually. This is the first time we've seen it so far, this run. We see up to 2 Hermes boons per run, usually. And oftentimes runners will simply go for like 1 high utility option, because it's very unreliable to get a combination of 2. But in this case, a combination of 2 of those boons is exactly what we're looking for. Because now not only does Lapras have the boon that makes her go fast after a dash, she also has picked up a boon that will increase all of her damage output by a percentage amount based on her bonus movement speed. And since we're constantly dashing, we're constantly having bonus movement speed, and thus constantly increasing our damage output with this boon called Rush Delivery by 50 to 100%. So that's just like best case scenario.
And Elena just got
Alina actually getting it as well, just doubling all of your damage across the board whenever you just recently dashed, which will be most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also the other thing is that also brings in the ability to intentionally be dashing even when you wouldn't, just to get that damage buff. So like we saw Elena just do at the start of that learning fight, usually you just kind of stand there and shoot them. But if you have RD, it's usually going to be better to get that dash in, and then you'll phase them faster. And Elena actually has a really good build here. She's making super quick work. And now that's a really good example of how the power of Hera is. You just couple stones, everything dies. That's like a 25 maybe second fight.
It's very cool that we actually get to see this because, of course, builds can get incredibly optimized, and if we're playing shorter categories with maybe just 1 or 3 runs total, we are obviously just resetting over and over again for good RNG. But in a marathon setting like we have here, we kind of just have to make do with whatever we get. But with a weapon that has like near limitless potential like Hera, and that getting like really like amped up builds like we're seeing here is like a real treat that is rare to actually see during a marathon, because we will be seeing some very ridiculous damage numbers.
And the other thing that actually both runners have gotten is an item from a well that increases their movement speed even further. And you might be thinking, well, that's just temporary. It actually isn't at this point in the run. So both runners have also taken the keepsake from Charon, the hourglass, or bone hourglass, I think the name is. And that means that those temporary items last longer. And at this point in the run, we're at Chamber 28, that is now guaranteed to last to Dad. So getting that item that increases move speed is now basically just an additional multiplicative damage increase for the rest of the run. And that really is the power of Hera, because you can get that, you can pick up that one item for like 20 gold, and now you're just dealing like 20 to 40% more damage for the rest of the run.
Yeah,
Hi, can I hop in here real quick?
Yeah.
I'm very sorry for interrupting, but I did want to let you know that we are 75% of the way to the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. That is under $900 left to hit that $3,500. So we are so close, chat. Get those donations in. We can do it.
Yeah, we can do that. Actually, I think now would probably be a good time to read out a couple of those donations too, as we're working our way through the rest of Elysium.
Well, I absolutely can do that. We have a lot of love coming in from the Fatales community and the Hades community and just people hanging out with us in general. We have $20 that came in from Tunis that says, "Here's some money, hides unreasonable amount of rats between dollar bills. You are shining and I'm proud of you." Thanks so much for that donation. Also, I love rats, so thank you also for the rats.
No, it's a trap.
Are the rats a trap? Oh no. Donate to tell me whether or not the rats are a trap. We also have $25 that came in from Ciora that says, "Hades is one of my all-time favorite games. We gotta get that 2 players, 1 controller run." And I agree, we're so close to getting that run. If Hades is also one of your favorite games, chat, you do not want to miss this run. 2 players, 1 controller. And even if you saw it at GDQ, they will be running a different aspect than they ran at that marathon. So you'll get to see a completely different run. It'll be really, really cool. You do not want to miss it, so get those donations in. And lastly, we had $50 come in from Rydia Caller that said, "Hi, Fatales and friends. I'm so excited to see this Hades run. Hades is the first game I was introduced to by this wonderful community through Game of the Month, and it's become one of my all-time favorites. Good luck on the run, arcalena and Trash Lapras."
Thanks. Yeah, so we just saw Elena making really quick work of the heroes, and actually she got a little bit unlucky there with how they lined up. So we'll see if Lapras can be a little bit more fortunate. Like we've been talking about basically every heroes fight, grouping them is important, and on Hera with its high single target, but low, kind of good AoE, that's even more the case. So you really do need them to be standing right next to each other to hit both with the casts. And the other thing that you can do is essentially there's this thing that called wall bugging. It also works on invulnerability bubbles, but essentially what happens is if your cast hits something, let's see if Lapras can get it. Not quite. If your cast hits something that it can't damage, it still explodes, but it doesn't get lodged in it. So you can hit a wall or maybe one of the other heroes' invulnerability bubbles, and then the cast will explode, dealing damage to whatever's right next to it, but you can pick it up and do that right again. So that's also something to look forward to going into Dad. Both runners are going to be trying to set those up.
Yeah, and the differentiation between lodging and non-lodging casts is actually quite important for how some of the different weapon utilize the cast mechanics. in this case, as nnevic mentioned, Hera not Hera. Aphrodite is a lodging cast, which means it just gets stuck in the enemy for a little bit, like the cast would do when you like normally throw them as Zagreus. We will also probably later be seeing builds where we utilize casts that do not lodge, which means once they hit the enemy, they drop back on the floor immediately and can be reused much faster. So there's a certain trade-off there that just synergizes differently with like different builds and weapons.
Yeah. And now Elena is going into the dad fight, so keep an eye out on how she's moving around trying to get Hades closer to walls, because that's a really important thing in this fight on Hera, just trying to make it so that we can get that damage out as fast as possible. This should be pretty fast. She's got a really good build.
And while you're keeping an eye out, also keep an eye out on our donation total, because we are under $800 away from the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. All right, back to you.
Thanks. Yeah.
We are kind of just enjoying the fireworks though at this point, because
yeah, probably could get a donation read in while Elena absolutely melts Hades.
Yeah, this is incredible to watch. It's also wild how close they are. Anyway, we had $10 come in from Mika, who said, with how in sync the runners are already, the 2 players, 1 controller run is gonna be amazing. I completely agree. Obligatory greetings from Germany, but also greetings to Germany, because Chelsea got me into Hades years ago. Keep it up, y'all.
Yes.
thanks.
Yeah. So we just saw Elena absolutely obliterate Hades. Lapras is just going into that fight, so we should see similar things. Maybe not quite as big numbers, but still very good. I think also Elena held the Meg Summon until phase 2. It looked like.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, well, she might have been able to. I don't know. I'm still going to talk about it. Essentially, usually we would use it phase 1, but if you have enough damage, you can still face him before. So you might actually end up doing a phase 2 Meg, and maybe we'll see that on our next weapon, which is Beowulf.
Yes, the shield, one of the best ranged weapons in the game.
Yeah, so if you've played Hades, you might know that there's a shield in it. That shield blocks things and is also a melee weapon. We didn't get the memo on it being a melee weapon, so basically Elena got the Hammer Chamber 1, but what we're looking to do is turn it into a bow. So now we have the Charge Shot Hammer, and it is now a better bow, like all shields are, famously. The thing to note about Beowulf is that it was one of the last weapons that was, or aspects that was put into the game. Particularly, this means that it has a couple more bugs than we might otherwise expect. And one of these is extremely run-defining, to the point that it makes Beowulf probably the best single aspect for speed. Essentially what's going to happen is we're going to be looking for a very specific boon called Mirage Shot. We get this boon from both Poseidon and Artemis, so it's a duo boon, like some of the other boons we've talked about earlier. And the big thing there is with Poseidon, we're going to be taking his cast. Lena still hasn't picked it up, but now she gets to pick it up at the same time as Lapras. And then we're also going to be looking for Artemis attack. And Mirage Shot on Beowulf is going to, it's supposed to just deal extra 30% damage on the cast, but it instead is bugged. It creates a second projectile, but that projectile actually does the full 100% damage. So, yeah, double damage. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, and Beowulf kind of mechanically functions similar to Hera the Bow, with how you're like loading the cast into your shots, but it comes with like a larger AoE area, and we're also utilizing a different boon, the Poseidon cast in this case, also partially because it comes with lower damage but an even larger AoE radius. So this weapon is very good at just vaguely aiming into the direction of the enemies and making everything explode.
Yeah, and then, similarly to Hera, when we're not trying to get Mirage, we're also going to be looking for, more things that buff that cast. So you're going to see Lapras going to a Chaos Gate here. We're looking for either something that buffs our cast damage or something that gives us an extra stone. Elena earlier ran into something that would have given her an extra stone, but unfortunately, the curse was really bad. Essentially, when we're speedrunning, we can't really take a curse that is going to...
Hello, everyone. We are so sorry about some of these technical difficulties we're running into. We need a moment to get set back up, but I do want to celebrate that we are just over $500. I think we're $590 away from reaching that 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. So just see this as an opportunity to go grab a quick drink, go hydrate, stand up, stretch for a little bit. And then if you still want to get those donations in for the bonus run and see more Hades, you've already seen just, a touch of what that 2 players, 1 controller run is going to look like. These are 2 absolutely incredible runners crushing this game. How about we see them crush it a little bit more? So thank you to everyone who's donated so far for that incentive. We are so close to meeting it. And now we've just got a little bit of extra time while we fix some technical difficulties and get this back and set up. So thank you all so much for your patience. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. We really, really appreciate it. So just hang out with us for a bit. It's going to be great. I would also love to take this time to let you know about some of the donations that came in for that 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. We really, really appreciate every single donation that's sent in. Again, regardless of if you put your name on it, if you add a comment, whatever you want to donate, however you want to donate, we really appreciate it. And also, if you don't want to, just being here, we really appreciate that too. We had $50 come in from Anonymous with no comment. We had another $50 come in from Anonymous with no comment. Thank you to both of these anonymous donors for your generous donations. We also had a $25 donation from Anonymous, as well as a $100 donation from Anonymous. So thank you to all the anonymous donors out there. We really appreciate you donating and helping us meet some of our huge milestones like this bonus run, and also like helping us reach the milestone tonight of $72,000. That's absolutely incredible. I cannot believe it. All of that is going to the National Women's Law Center, helping out that cause, and we are so happy to be working with them as our charity for this event. We also had $100 come in from Bookworm42 that just says 2P1C. And I agree. Can we get all of that 2P1C? Can we get those chants going in chat? And can we get some 2P1C donations in? Let's do like a 2P1C $5 donation trade. How about that? Just send it in. Don't know what to write? Just write 2P1C. Let's get that chant going in chat. Let's get all that love for the 2 players, 1 controller run. And speaking of that run, we are back, and we have our runners back after these technical difficulties. Thank you all so much for sticking around. Let's get back to some Hades.
Alrighty, yeah, so let's get started. Runners, we'll be getting going again in 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, so looks like Elena's going right back into the Furies fight. Lapras is a couple of chambers behind, but this game is swinging enough that she can totally make that time back up. We have still almost 3 whole runs left, so still kind of anyone's game at the moment. We also can see that Beowulf is still doing some pretty big damage numbers, even though we don't have the boon that's gives you that double damage. And a lot of that at this point comes from that charge shot hammer. So we mentioned earlier how it turns, your shield into a bow. It also gives you a huge amount of damage. So, normal base damage that it's going to give you is 80. I think usually you have like a 40 damage attack, so it's basically giving us twice the amount of damage on our attack. Then Beowulf also, when you load your cast, that means that bull rush, or rather the charge shot, we didn't really see much bull rushing because both runners got the hammer quickly. But that also means that attack will do an extra 100% damage. So really, Beowulf is kind of set up for speedrunning already, and then it also has that bug on top of it.
Power of Olympus.
Yeah, this is definitely the largest divide we've seen between the two runners so far, but as mentioned, these runs are so swingy and we still got a lot of gameplay time left, so who knows what will happen here. Lapras is also now about to head into Asphodel, but Elena is also getting quite lucky here with more free rooms. Some of these free rooms are not just dialogue, actually, we also have been kind of glossing over that, but they actually offer like little bony. Sometimes they are somewhat inconsequential to the run, but the one we just saw, Eurydice, upgrades the rarity of either boons in our possession or boons we are picking up in the future, and can actually like really ramp up builds even further. In this case, though, we saw Alina going for the option where our future boons will be of higher rarity to maximize the chances of seeing that coveted duo boon that will basically just double our damage output by itself.
Yep. And also, Elena just picked up the first Artemis boon as well, so... Oh, and Lapras also gets the same free room too, so that puts them on pretty even footing here. Elena got the first Artemis boon, but again, because Mirage Shot is a duo boon, you need to have one boon from both Poseidon and Artemis before you can pick it up. The boons needs to be like an attack special, or cast, or call, I want to say. But, the way that the build is designed for Beowulf, that's kind of not... We already have those, so you don't need to worry about picking them up. But Elena is unfortunately not going to be able to get Mirage Shot before Lerny, so that's actually a good avenue for Lapras to make up time. If she can get the boon before that boss fight, that will save a good amount of time.
And one of the nice things about Beowulf is that since the core of your damage output is really just the cast upgrade and then an Artemis upgrade in one of your other slots, it leaves you a lot of freedom with like your other core boons that you can fill up with. And there are certain aspects where you're kind of like scared to pick up other gods' boons because you might just be presented only with options that actively interfere with your build. But Beowulf kind of can like make nearly all of it work, and thus gives like a lot of flexibility. And that's part of the reason why the aspect is like so good at really making those fast, deep runs, not just because the ceiling is so incredibly high, but also because it is very good at constantly maintaining a position from which on you can like go into your ideal build.
And Lapras actually did end up getting Mirage Shot right there, so you should start seeing her dealing much bigger damage numbers in Learning. This should be a pretty fast Learning fight.
This should be an insta-phase on the first shot?
Nah, not quite. Unfortunately, Common Cast is a little bad, but yeah. The other great thing that we're going to see about Beowulf in this fight is it's kind of has a built-in high amount of AoE damage as well. It's kind of unfair, given that it gets both these huge damage numbers and does them in a huge area. But that does mean that if you can get those learning heads to group up, like Lapras is working on right now, the fight can be really quickly. So we see her just kind of grouping them into groups of 2 like that, and that's basically pretty well executed learning. On the other side, Elena does have a bit of a lead, but if she doesn't get Mirage, it's going to be pretty hard to maintain. Lapras just kind of has twice as much damage right now, and that's... so she really does want to get that as soon as possible, because otherwise you're having to spend a lot more time killing enemies, and especially bosses.
For now, at least, Elena has a couple extra cast stones to make up for it, but those are only temporary in this case, so one of them is gonna last a pretty good while, but it is gonna tie her over damage-wise to make up a little for the lack of Mirage Shot until she can hopefully pick it up.
Yeah, the other thing to point out about Beowulf is that, like with Hera, we've taken that Bone Hourglass from Charon to make those temporary well items like the stone that Elena's picked up last a bit longer. And with that, though, I think we do have time for another couple of donations while they're working through Elysium.
can do. And we are almost at $3,000 out of $3,500 for the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. And we are also under $100 away from hitting $73,000 in total for the week. So get those donations in. We're so close to such incredible milestones. We had $50 come in from Megalink with no comment, but thank you so much for your generous donation. And we also had Panda Bear who donated $50, also with no comment, but thank you also so much for your generous donation. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And also, while that was happening, Elena did manage to pick up Mirage Shot, so you'll notice that she's now able to one-shot a lot of enemies that were before taking, 2 or even 3 stones. The other really good thing about Mirage on Bayo is it's not just that it doubles damage, you get that in 2 instances of damage. Something that we haven't talked about too much, but a lot of enemies have 2 versions, one with armor and one without armor. If you strip the armor on one, that basically means any overflow damage doesn't go through. So having 2 separate instances of damage as well means that you might be able to, one of them will destroy the armor, and then the other one will just finish that enemy off. And that's another reason why it's so helpful. Elena also looks like just picked up a braid from one of those wells. That item gives you 50% damage on your cast. So it's again another reason why Beowulf is so good. We just can scale it from so many sources.
You can tell armored enemies apart from regular enemies because they have that additional yellow health bar on top of the regular red one. Like when you break the yellow health bar, then the red one appears underneath. And they're actually extremely relevant for speedrunners beyond just like the damage thresholds nnevic was mentioning. Because while the enemies you get in a room are randomly selected, each room has like a certain allotment for how many enemies will spawn. And if they're spawning armored versions, there will be less of them able to spawn in a room. And with the damage spikes we are hitting in these runs, we often barely even care if the enemy we're hitting is armored or not. So that makes a room a lot faster if we have the build to deal with armored enemies if they show up in their armored variants. There are certain enemies that are very much hated to see for speedrunners when they come without armor, but actually one of the better options as soon as they have armor on, because they're still incredibly easy to kill and there's gonna be a lot less of them suddenly.
Hi, can I hop in real quick with some big news? We have just surpassed $3,300 all of a sudden for the 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. That is only $185 to go. We are 94% of the way there. I will give you all of the different numbers around how close we are to meeting this incentive. So we are so close. We can do a chat. Get your donations in. We also had $5 come in from Mika, who said 1 ticket for the 2P1C train, please. Can't wait for our train conductors, Arcalena and Lapras, going right through the enemies. So get on that $5 train because we don't need that much more to get that run.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. And like we've been said earlier, like this 2P1C run is so impressive. If you think there's a lot going on in Hades normally, now you're only doing half of it. So they need to synchronize everything up. They're going to be playing a weapon that pushes so many buttons. I don't know how they do it. It's get that in, folks.
It's the wife buff.
True. Yeah, so Elena is now moving into the Hades fight on Beowulf. And this is probably going to be about the fastest fight we're going to see today. Beo has, with all of the damage options she has a pretty good build. So yeah, we just see her keeping him nice and close to that wall, so he's well behaved. And now it's just, okay, well, as soon as I said he was well behaved, he isn't. But just making really quick work of these phases, and you can just see how much burst damage we can get here.
Yeah, there's basically 2 shots necessary to just go from one invulnerability bubble to the next. Like one shot with forecast and then another shot with sometimes even just 2 or 3 will be enough to shred through an entire third of this guy's health bar.
Mm-hmm. And Lapras is not far behind. I think that 1 boss fight separates them, which is still very, very close. Lapras also has a slightly better build here. able to basically insta-phase there. So yeah, just love watching his health bar go down. This is why I play this weapon so much.
Well, he's making us wait a little again.
Yeah, he's been loving to go invisible today, but, you know.
Yeah, huge respect to the runners. Like, that is one of the reasons why, for me, it would be incredibly hard to, like, perform Hades speedruns in a live settings, because there's just so many little RNG things that can wrong, and it can be a little tilting sometimes, and there's, like, great mental strength that goes into performing under these conditions in a marathon setting where there's, like, no takebacks and no restarts. You just gotta deal with whatever the game throws at you, which can be quite crushing sometimes, but these two are doing an absolutely fantastic job.
And you know who else is doing a
now
fantastic
Elena
job?
and soon Lapras will be on the final weapon of the night, I believe.
Hello, I'm so sorry. I forgot to unmute myself on some channels, so I may have just yelled at chat without yelling at all of you. You know who else is doing a fantastic job? Everyone watching and chat, because we just met that 2 players, 1 controller bonus run. I'm so sorry for interrupting, but thank you so much, everyone, for helping us meet that goal. We will be seeing 2 players, 1 controller. It's going to be amazing. Thank you all so much for your donations and for meeting that incentive.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Thank you all. Yeah, so the last weapon, Fists. I know a lot of people really love this casually. I know I liked it casually. Chelsea, I think you did. I'd assume you did because you're running it now.
Yeah, I don't love it. Just love it casually. I also love it for speedrunning specifically.
Yeah,
so if you allow, I will
please
talk a little bit about the fists here. The fists are a somewhat unique weapon in that the regular attacks come out in like extremely quick succession and can be like chained together. Unfortunately, for the purpose of a live stream marathon setting, we are kind of going with the safe build option, where we are picking up Zeus attack again, because we attack so much just in attack that doesn't scale percentage-wise with our attack, like we would prefer on many other weapons, is our goal, but rather something that just with every hit applies a flat amount of damage, which is what the Zeus lightning bolts do, because the fists just throw out attacks so quickly but they're like so low in damage individually that it's much more efficient to focus on stuff that scales well with having hit effect applied very quickly. The typical choice for speedruns of this weapon is also Merciful End, where we go for Aris and Lucina, but as we mentioned when that came up earlier, that is a notoriously hard to get together build, so it's understandable that in a live setting we're going with the more straightforward and simple build option here. But I'm excited to see what the runners are making out of it.
Yeah, the other thing to look for is, especially on things where we're just going Zeus attack like this and then trying to get other things, we want to see a lot more Zeus. And yeah, Elena even takes a trial for that. So real quick, trials, if you see here where there are 2 gods to choose from here, so you pick one and then the other one gets mad at you because, you know, they're Greek gods, right? That's kind of their whole thing. They get a little bit selfish sometimes, so they get mad at you. You go through like a harder combat that can take a little bit longer, but at the end of the end you get to get a boon from 2 gods in that room, so it can be a really good time to get a stronger build because you get kind of 2 gods for the price of 1, essentially. And yeah, so Elena was able to get another Zeus boon, Jolted, which is actually really good for getting some boss damage together, and she also gets Divine Dash, which is a good safety option, good for marathons, and also it just allows you to deflect projectiles, so that can kill some weaker enemies just by, you know, dashing into the thing they shoot at you.
Right, and with that we are also already about to enter the Furies once more again. And with boss fights, especially, another speciality of this aspect of the fist will be shown off, where every 12 regular attacks you land on enemies, and single attacks that hit several enemies count for several hits for that, will charge up your special attack, which is a large uppercutter. And once it's fully charged, it will apply 5 additional times instead of just the once. And that's another area where like the on-hit effects really shine on the weapons, and it's on the fists. And it's also just an extremely satisfying feeling of just constantly charging up your big uppercut and then hitting the bosses in the face for like massive damage.
Yeah, the other thing that Lapras has picked up is Splash Dash, our old friend. So that'll also help her be dealing some damage to the Furies. Again, just because you do so much dashing, speedrunning this game, and also playing it otherwise, but casually you might not be right next to the boss. Speedrunning, we're always in their face, so those dashes just deal a whole bunch of damage on top of everything else you're doing. It does actually look like, Chelsea, that you might get some Merciful End here, though, looking at Elena's build.
Yeah, she sold her attack similar to how she sold her dash earlier to get the Asina dash. Now she's selling her attack to hopefully pick up an Ares attack to open up Merciful End once again. And yeah, what can I say? It's my bread and butter. I've spent hours in Tartarus looking for that boon. So I'll be excited to see if we can see it here live on stage.
Yeah, on the other side, I didn't actually see what Lapras did there, but she might have a similar decision to make. Looks like she goes for the Lambent Plume instead. So yeah, that keepsake is from Hermes, again, the god of speed, and what that does is it actually makes it a little bit easier to get rush delivery. So usually, to get rush delivery, you'll have to have one of a few boons that give you some bonus move speed. But with the Lambent Plume, which also gives you a bit of bonus move speed, that unlocks rush delivery for you. So that basically means you have a twice as high chance of getting it, which can be really good for consistency.
Yeah, we're just stacking the die roll in our favor just a little bit more.
And, there's a whole lot of stuff in Hades speedrunning that's just, you can't really guarantee you get something, but there are a bunch of little micro-optimizations you can do to make something, maybe 10% more likely, and with the number of runs that you do, that does add up, and it helps.
Yeah, always play to your outs, as trading card gamers will definitely know.
Yeah. And I think we can probably get a couple more donations in, actually, while we're finishing up Asphodel.
I'm so happy to do that for you. We had a bunch of donations come in about petting the dog that I would love to let you know about, because we still can continue to pet the dog. We've gotten 2 pets so far, and we still have 8 pets that we can still give to our runners, including during the 2 players, 1 controller run. So we had $25 come in from George 6 Spike that just said, "Love it, pet that doggo." We also had $5 come in from Hill that said, $5 donation train for dog petting, and I completely agree. And we had $10 come in from I'm Just Jace that says, "My dog lives with my parents, so I cannot currently pet him. Sending the pets to the best 3-headed boy. Also, trans rights."
Trans rights. Yeah, so Elena is now working her way through the Lerny fight.
Unfortunately, it seems like she has not yet picked up Merciful End, which makes this fight in particular extremely painful, because fists, out of all the weapons, have like the worst potential for doing anything at range. So we have to like walk up to these pets like one by one, hope that they kind of come into our direction maybe, or spawn in a nice order. But we are somewhat at the mercy of the game here, because we really have very limited options of applying burst damage at this point in the run with the state the build is in.
Yeah, although I will say that there is one thing that Fisk does that kind of helps with this. So the thing that we have is the Hammer on Fists, Breaching Cross, deals 900% damage to armored enemies. So whenever you dash strike, that dash strike will deal a huge amount of damage to the armor specifically. The little side heads on Lerny are kind of half armor, so this means that we can kind of help mitigate the base weapon not doing a whole lot. It isn't really enough to make it a super fast fight, but it does help. And you see both runners making really good work of that. So just a lot of dash strikes to help manage the fact that, there's not a whole lot of damage here to deal with the armored enemies.
Yeah, a common theme on a lot of the melee weapons in Hades is that dash strikes are nearly always more efficient than standing strikes. Sometimes they have somewhat awkward animations that they kind of trap you in, or you like move around a little bit doing those animations in ways that are like not necessarily advantageous. So dash strikes are just very quick and precise, and what we prefer to work with in our speedruns.
Probably another couple donations while we're working our way through the last Elysium.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to remind everyone that we are so close to $75,000 raised so far for the National Women's Law Center. We are just over $1,500 from hitting that huge milestone. So let's see if we can hit it tonight. Get those donations in, pet that dog, hit that 75K. It's simple. It's a simple equation, simple math. We've talked about big numbers tonight a lot, and that's a big number that I think we'd all be honored to be able to reach tonight. Yield Joy sent in $25 and said, Hades is my very favorite game, and I'm so happy to be watching it on the couch next to my very favorite person and my own single-headed Cerberus. Blood and Darkness!
Thank you.
Probably get a few more.
Oh, okay.
Was that a few more?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
All right, I'm going to give a shout out to a couple of people who sent in donations while we were raising money for the 2 players 1 controller incentive, that were so fascinated by this run that they were absolutely speechless and did not leave anything in their comments. We had $50 come in from ARD, $50 from Steven, $100 from Reverend Gumby, and $350 from Klondike 7. So thank you so much to all of you. You did not need to leave comments. Thank you so much for your donation. It really means the world to us, even if you didn't have anything else to say.
All right,
Yeah.
I was about to talk a little more about how the builds are progressing. Specifically, Elena has now picked up the Merciful End, if I'm seeing it correctly. And not only that, but she also encountered Hermes for +3 dashes, so now 5 dashes in total, which is always a good thing. But in this case, she had already picked up the boon that makes you go very fast after you dash. And at that point, the game becomes rather hard to control. We are dashing 5 times in a row and like going very, very fast as well. It's like a pretty mechanically intense task to like still keep up the precision with each individual dash when everything is moving this fast.
Yeah, and the other thing to say about that is just whenever you're doing that, remember this is at the end of an hour and a half run, so they've been doing this for a really long time now, or like hour 20 minutes. I'm good at math, I swear. So just being able to keep that standard of play over these long play sessions, and especially in normal attempts, they're going to be doing this while having done like an hour of resets beforehand just to try and get the build together for that first run too. So just these 2 runners are so good at what they do.
And it's also absolutely important to stress that this run really stayed incredibly close for the longest time. Now they're like pulling apart a little bit more, but going basically head to head throughout the entire first 3 runs is absolutely great from a spectator perspective, and a huge testament to both of their ability to just stay in the game, stay in the race.
Yeah. Also, shout outs to Elena for saying hi to the shade that's our one fan in the arena. Basically the entire arena is cheering for Theseus, but there's this one Zagreus fan in there, so it's always good to see runners thanking that shade in a marathon setting.
Because they're the heroes, right? And we are just some nasty god from the underworld. And
honestly,
they kind of
despise
us.
Yeah. Probably get some more donations while we're going through that last Styx.
All right, so we had a donation come in from Annie Just 3 for $10. And I as a host, I always told myself that I would not sing on stream. But because we met this 2 players 1 controller incentive, I feel like I have to. Do you all mind?
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay. They have sent me a little ditty here from Disney's Hercules. We are on our way. We can go the distance. We'll be there someday. Keep on speeding by. Let us save those frames and send no trains. Will we save those animals or glitch out of bounds again? Let's go, gamers. I'm so excited to help support the National Women's Law Center. Thank you for all of your hard work and dedication in putting on this wonderful event. Thank you for that donation, and I'm so happy we met that incentive. And yeah, I'm sorry you had to hear me sing, but...
Oh, don't apologize. That was wonderful.
Wonderful lyrics.
You ready for another go?
Don't apologize for that. And during that donation, Elena did also pick up Impending Doom again. So that actually is going to combine with those +3 dashes. That's going to help out a lot. With +3 dashes, you kind of lose that chance at additive from Rush Delivery, that the boon that gives you extra damage based on move speed. But Impending Doom does a whole lot to even that out. So we should see a pretty fast dad fight, all things considered.
Yeah, nearly as fast as other weapons can go. Unfortunately, fists are famously the worst aspect for speedrunning, and that's probably part of the reason why they're in the very last slot here for the stream. But they absolutely put on a good show regardless.
Yeah, and
time's gonna be coming up for me when Hades dies for the last time.
Yep.
Let's see you deal with this.
He's spinning.
Go back. Not yet.
And time.
And Lapras is actually just picking up that last Satyr Sack, so really only one boss fight behind at the end of 6 Hades runs, which is pretty impressive. There's a lot more things that can go wrong. So this is a impressive showing, getting a race this close.
And it also grants us the luxury of fully focusing on that one last battle we have in this awesome run.
Oh, hi, Father.
And reminders that if you get donations in, we can give the good boy pets after this too.
The good boy deserves a lot of pets.
That he does.
Megara. I have to help him. You're wasting Megara's valuable time.
I will say Lapras's build is a little bit weaker. Elena obviously did get the full fists build, so that helped a lot for damage. But we can kind of see what these weapons are going to look like when you don't get something that good. She's still putting out actually a pretty surprising amount of damage here, given the build. But it's a little bit, it's not quite the same, especially with more Void Stones. They've truly blessed us with their presence today. So you'll see that she's having to spend a lot of extra time going and killing those crystal things again.
And it looks like, for once, since this is a bit of a longer fight, we will be seeing a fully charged Zeus call, actually, for phase 2 here.
That probably is actually doesn't end up being too... Oh, it's Athena call.
Oh, it's the Athena call, right? I totally missed that.
Okay, I thought it was Zeus. I always forget that Athena has a call, to be honest. Yeah, they're like the same color. And Lapras is actually also down to her last Death Defiance, so she might have to play a little carefully here, but she should be fine. She's very good at the game and also has... the build isn't that bad, right?
Yeah, the fists unfortunately demonstrate why this sort of build kind of falls off without any further mechanics in the weapon to abuse or synergies.
And that's time for Lapras.
Time.
Again,
He's the...
That was fun.
I did it.
Certainly an experience at the end there.
My
The duality of fists.
This is why we play ME.
Yep.